The Moai of Easter Island are not what we thought they were, and I mean that in the most literal way possible. What AI scanning found beneath these statues in 2025 has genuinely changed how researchers are looking at this entire island. I want to walk you through exactly what we knew before, what changed, what was actually found underground, and what the debate looks like right now. Because there is a lot of noise around this topic, I want to cut through it and give you just the facts, the confirmed stuff, the theories, and the parts that are still being argued over. So let me start with what most people already know, or think they know. Easter Island sits in the South Pacific. It is one of the most remote inhabited places on Earth. The people who live there call it Rapa Nui, and across the island, there are nearly 900 stone statues called Moai. These things are enormous. Some of them are over 20 meters tall. Some weigh more than 75 tons. They were carved from volcanic rock called tuff, pulled from a single quarry on the island, and then moved across rough terrain to their final positions. How exactly that was done is still debated, but the fact that it happened is confirmed. These statues exist. They are real, and they have been studied for decades. Now, here is the first thing that most people still do not know, even though it has been confirmed for years through physical excavation. The Moai are not just heads. That image of giant stone heads rising from the ground is accurate from above, but those heads are attached to full bodies, complete torsos buried beneath the soil. Some statues, when measured from base to crown, stand over 30 feet tall in total. The bodies were buried over centuries by natural soil movement and erosion. So for a long time, people just saw the heads and assumed that was all there was. That assumption was wrong. The bodies are there. This is confirmed archaeology, not theory. What I find interesting is that even knowing this, researchers still had major gaps. Because you cannot just dig around statues that are fragile, sacred to a living indigenous community, and sitting on a volcanic ecosystem that does not handle aggressive excavation well. Physical digging has limits, and that is exactly where the 2025 scanning project became important. In early 2025, a research partnership involving Stanford University, the University of Chile, and a private technology company called Geodepth deployed a set of scanning tools across the island. What they used was a combination of ground-penetrating radar, which sends signals into the ground and maps what is down there based on what bounces back. Drone-mounted LiDAR scanning, which builds extremely detailed 3-dimensional models of surfaces and subsurfaces from above, and multispectral imaging, which captures data across wavelengths that human eyes simply cannot see. Each tool on its own is useful. Combined, they produced something remarkable. Terabytes of raw data covering the island's subsurface at a level of detail no previous survey had come close to achieving. Now here is where the AI part comes in. And this is something I want to be clear about, because I think people misunderstand what AI actually did here. It did not make discoveries on its own. What it did was process an enormous amount of raw scan data, far more than any human team could work through in a reasonable time frame, and flag the parts that looked unusual. The algorithms were trained on archaeological patterns, geological layering, and construction signatures from other ancient sites. When they sorted through the Easter Island data, they started identifying things that did not match natural geology and did not match anything from previously known human activity on the island. That flagging process is what opened the door to the actual findings. So what did those findings actually show? Let me be specific here, because this is where things get genuinely surprising. Beneath at least 7 of the scanned statues, the AI flagged what researchers are describing as man-made voids. These are not natural cavities. The shapes are too precise for that. They are roughly the size of a small room. They sit more than 10 feet below the base of the statues. And based on the geometry of the scan signatures, these appear to have been deliberately sealed. One scan returned a signature that matched the profile of a spiral staircase. Now, whether that staircase leads somewhere functional or was built purely as a symbolic architectural element, that is still unclear. The current status on this is the voids are confirmed in the scan data. What is inside them and why they were sealed is still being debated. That distinction matters, and I want to keep it clear. Then there are the carvings. This part is what really got researchers talking. The multispectral imaging uncovered detailed inscriptions on the buried torsos of multiple statues. These are markings that are completely invisible from above ground. Centuries of erosion and burial have hidden them entirely. But beneath the surface, they are preserved. And the AI imaging brought them into view for the first time. What do these carvings actually show? That is where the theories start. Some of the markings share characteristics with traditional Polynesian art. Some match known petroglyphs from the region, but others do not match anything in the existing record. Some researchers believe the structured arrangement of certain glyphs could represent an early form of proto-writing, a visual communication system that may predate known Polynesian languages. Others think the markings are ritual or ceremonial in nature. Still others see the geometric patterns, particularly the spirals and solar symbols, as potential astronomical markers, star maps, or eclipse timers encoded in stone. The current status on the carvings is this. They are confirmed as real subsurface features, revealed by the scan data. What they mean is still being analyzed and debated. No single interpretation has consensus yet. Now, the discovery that generated the most attention was one specific carving on one specific statue. This Moai was positioned away from the main clusters on the island, and on its torso, the scan revealed what appeared to be an image of a wave engulfing a human figure. Surrounding symbols appeared to be arranged in a way that suggested the image was a record of something catastrophic. A flood, a tsunami, a major natural event significant enough that the people who lived through it carved the memory into stone and buried it where it might last indefinitely. Let me be honest about where the science stands on this. No one is making a definitive claim that this is definitely a tsunami record. What researchers are saying is that the composition and the surrounding symbols suggest an intentional record of a catastrophic event. What that event was exactly, when it happened, and what scale it reached are all still open questions. What I find compelling about this particular finding is what came next in the analysis. Similar markings appear on multiple statues across different parts of the island. Not just one statue, multiple, and a pattern repeated across different locations is not random. A pattern implies intention. This is where some researchers have started cross-referencing the geographical positions of the statues with known tectonic fault lines and historical tsunami impact zones around Easter Island. That analysis is ongoing and has not produced confirmed results yet. But the line of inquiry is serious, and it is being pursued by people with genuine credentials. This brings me to what has been called the containment hypothesis. And I want to be careful here, because this is the most speculative part of what is circulating in research discussions. Some researchers have proposed that the sealed chambers beneath the Moai were not built for burial or storage. They were built to keep something contained. The weight of the statues, positioned above the voids, the precision of the sealed structures, the deliberate burial of the entire construction. In this reading, all of that points to a culture that believed something needed to stay permanently underground, something not meant to be opened again. Mainstream archaeologists are measured in how they respond to this framing. Many maintain that the Moai were built with deep reverence and ceremony, that the most reasonable explanation for the chambers is ritual or ceremonial in nature, and that sensationalizing the findings does a disservice to a living cultural tradition. The Rapa Nui people, whose ancestors built these statues, are still here. They have called for restraint before any physical excavation of the newly identified chambers. They consider the land sacred, and they are asking the global scientific community to proceed with genuine respect, rather than with the momentum of discovery pushing ahead of everything else. To me, that is one of the most important parts of this entire situation, and I think it gets lost in the excitement over the scan results. These are not just interesting archaeological objects sitting in neutral territory. They are part of a living culture with its own authorities and its own understanding of what should and should not be disturbed. The call for restraint from the Rapa Nui community is not an obstacle to science. It is a boundary set by the people with the deepest legitimate connection to what was found. Now, I want to talk about what this means for archaeology more broadly. Because the Easter Island Project is not just about Easter Island. It is a demonstration of what is now possible at archaeological sites around the world. Think about what ground-penetrating radar, combined with LiDAR and AI processing, actually gives you. You can build a detailed model of what is underground at a site before a single shovel touches the surface. You can identify where to dig, what you are likely to find, and how deep it goes, all without disturbing anything. Sites that might have taken a research team a decade to partially map can now be modeled in full subsurface detail in a fraction of that time. The pace of potential discovery has changed dramatically. Not in the future, right now. Teams are already applying similar approaches at Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, a site that has already rewritten our understanding of when organized human civilization began, and at Angkor Wat in Cambodia, where the canopy and terrain have hidden large portions of the ancient urban landscape from conventional survey. What those scans produce in the coming years could be as significant as anything found at Easter Island. What I think is worth paying attention to is the gap between what AI can find and what it can actually tell us. This is something that gets lost in coverage of these discoveries. AI is exceptional at identifying patterns in data. It can flag a structural void with precision. It can match surface geometries across thousands of data points. What it cannot do is interpret meaning. It cannot tell you whether a chamber was a burial site, a ritual space, a storage room, or something else entirely. That distinction is not a minor detail. It is the entire question. Culture, belief, ceremony, and symbolic intention are not readable from a scan signature. They require human interpretation, historical context, and ideally input from the communities whose ancestors built what is being studied. If the technology accelerates faster than the interpretive frameworks needed to make sense of what it finds, there is a real risk of misreading discoveries in ways that are not just academically wrong, but genuinely disrespectful to living people whose heritage is being examined. What I keep coming back to when I look at all of this is the question of what the builders of the Moai were actually trying to do. Whether the chambers are ritual, ceremonial, or something else entirely, the engineering effort involved in constructing them was not casual. Researchers with serious credentials have confirmed that the sealing of these structures was done with a level of precision and sustained effort that implies a very specific and very deliberate intent. These were not afterthoughts. They were designed to last. The people who carved these statues were thinking across long time scales. They encoded information in a medium they trusted to outlast everything else. They buried those messages in ways that protected them from centuries of erosion, and they marked them with figures designed to be visible from a distance for as long as the island stood. That is not the behavior of a civilization that did not understand the weight of what they were preserving. That is the behavior of people who understood that knowledge could be lost, and who were doing everything in their power to make sure certain things were not. What those things were, we are only beginning to understand. The scan data has given us a map. It has not given us the meaning yet. That part of the work is ahead of us. And it is the harder part, the part that requires more than algorithms. It requires patience, collaboration with the people who hold living knowledge of this culture, and the kind of humility that does not come naturally when you are sitting on top of a discovery this significant. So for me, the main thing I take from all of this is that the Moai are not solved. They have been partially opened. The AI scanning revealed real physical structures that no one knew existed. The chambers are confirmed in the data. The carvings are confirmed. The debate about what they mean is just getting started. And the ethical question of whether and how to physically excavate is not settled. It is urgent and live right now. What I understand now is that this is not the end of the mystery. It is the first real look at how deep it actually goes.